When I first arrived in Black Hollow, it felt like time had stopped. The roads were empty, the air unnaturally still. A heavy gray sky pressed down on the hills like a lid, and the trees, tall, gnarled things with bark like blistered skin, leaned just a little too close to the road. I should have turned back right then. But I didn't. My uncle had passed suddenly, heart failure, the coroner said. He'd lived alone for years in the stone cottage on the edge of the forest, a place I hadn't visited since I was a child. I remember the fireplace, the thick wool blankets, and his stories, always whispered at night, always ending with a warning. Now, the house was mine. I came to clean it out, sign the deed, and maybe sell it. Just a few days, I told myself. I wasn't ready for what I found. The cottage was exactly as I remembered, but everything felt faded. The once vibrant rugs were now dull and stiff with dust. Cobwebs clung to the corners. There was a teacup on the kitchen counter, cracked and half filled with cloudy water, like he'd meant to finish it but never got the chance. That night, I wandered through the house, touching the worn furniture, brushing my fingers along the spines of old books. I felt him everywhere, his presence in the creak of the floorboards, the smell of pine and smoke in the curtains. I missed him, more than I expected to. It was just before midnight when I found the letter. I'd pulled down an old leather-bound journal from the shelf, a habit of his, jotting notes, sketching trees and strange symbols. But this one felt different. As I flipped through, a folded piece of parchment slid out and landed on the floor. I picked it up. The edges were frayed, the ink smudged by time and maybe tears. It was addressed to me. To Daniel. If you ever come back. My hands trembled as I read the words. His handwriting was weak, like it had taken every ounce of strength just to write them. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And if you're in Black Hollow, then it's already started. Don't stay past the third night. They come then. The lights. The voices. Don't follow them. Whatever you do, don't go into the woods. I tried to stop it. I really did. Forgive me. I sat down on the edge of the bed and read it again. My heart pounded, louder than the wind outside. He wasn't a superstitious man. He was grounded. Careful. If he wrote something like this, he believed it. Every word. I wanted to dismiss it. Tell myself he'd been old. Tired. Confused. But something inside me twisted, an old memory, one I had buried deep. A dream I used to have as a boy, where strange lights floated outside the bedroom window, whispering my name. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard things. Soft creaks, like footsteps on old wood. A whisper that sounded like my name, but stretched and broken, like it came from underwater. At one point, I swear I heard a child laugh, right outside the window. But when I got up to check, there was nothing there. Just trees. Silent and still. The next day, I tried to distract myself. I cleaned. Sorted through papers. Told myself I was being silly. But by evening, the sky had turned a bruised purple, and the wind smelled like rain and rot. And that's when I saw them. Out in the woods, just beyond the clearing, small lights, glowing pale blue, flickering like fireflies, but too slow, too deliberate. They hovered between the trees, moving like they were searching. Like they were aware. I stood frozen by the window, my breath fogging the glass. My heart thumped so loud I thought it might shake the panes. Then one of the lights stopped. It floated to the edge of the tree line, facing the cottage. Facing me. And though it had no eyes, no face, I knew it was looking at me. My body wouldn't move. I couldn't even blink. The light flickered, once, twice, then vanished. But in that moment, something shifted in the air. A whisper, barely audible, like the forest had exhaled in relief. Or warning. I backed away from the window, my legs shaking. And I remembered the letter. Don't stay past the third night. The next morning, I told myself it had been a dream. A trick of the eyes. The kind of thing that happens when your mind is frayed, your heart aching, and the house is too quiet for comfort. But deep down, I knew better. I'd seen the light. Felt its stare. And worse, I had heard something, just before it disappeared. A whisper. It hadn't said words exactly. More like a memory of a voice. Soft, full of sorrow. Almost familiar. I spent the morning wandering the cottage in a fog, my body moving but my thoughts somewhere else. The air felt heavier. The shadows longer. I tried to shake it off by keeping busy, scrubbing the kitchen, boxing up old clothes, opening windows to let in some light. But even the sun, when it finally rose, seemed distant. Pale. It wasn't until I entered the study that I saw the change. My uncle's desk was just as he'd left it, pens scattered, notebooks stacked, his old brass lamp still dusty with time. But something was different. One of the desk drawers was open. Just a crack. I hadn't noticed it the day before. Or maybe it hadn't been open then. I hesitated before pulling it wider, half expecting to find something impossible. Inside were pages, torn, half-burned notes, sketches of trees with strange eyes drawn into the bark, and in the corner of one page, a name I hadn't seen in years. Eleanor. My chest tightened. She had been my childhood friend. Lived 3 houses down. We played hide-and-seek, made up stories, built forts in the woods. But one day, she vanished. No one ever found her. No body. No trace. I was only 10. I'd buried the memory like everyone else had. And yet here it was, in my uncle's handwriting. A girl who had disappeared 2 decades ago, scrawled next to a drawing of a light floating among trees. I stared at the name until the letters blurred. Then I saw something else, words faintly penciled beneath the drawing. She followed them. That night, I sat by the window, heart pounding with every rustle of wind outside. I didn't want to look. Didn't want to know if they'd come again. But I had to. At exactly midnight, they returned. First, just one, gliding between the trees like a moth made of starlight. Then another. And another. They moved slowly, gracefully, casting an eerie glow on the bark and brambles. I pressed my palm against the cold window. They looked so peaceful. Almost beautiful. But then, one of them turned. And again, it stopped at the edge of the forest. Closer this time. Its light dimmed, pulsed, and then, like a breeze stirring leaves, I heard it again. A whisper. Just one word. Daniel. My name. The voice wasn't strange or frightening. It was soft. Familiar. Like someone I knew once, long ago. A child's voice. My breath caught. I stumbled back from the window, nearly tripping over the chair. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I wasn't tired. But because every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, floating in the darkness, watching. Calling. Waiting. The letter echoed in my mind like a drumbeat. Don't stay past the 3rd night. But I had questions now. Questions I couldn't leave unanswered. Who were they? What had happened to Eleanor? I didn't leave the house all the next day. The lights were gone with the morning, as if they'd never been there at all. But their presence clung to the cottage like a damp mist. I could feel it in my bones, in the silence between the ticking of the clock. Every creak of the floorboard made me flinch. Every gust of wind set my heart racing. The name on the page haunted me. Eleanor. She'd been gone for 20 years. One minute we were playing hide-and-seek, and the next, she was gone. No one ever found a trace of her. Her family moved away not long after. People whispered, but no one talked about what really happened. And now her name had shown up in my uncle's desk, alongside sketches of glowing lights and cryptic warnings. He knew something. He'd been trying to uncover it, or stop it. I sat for hours reading through his journals. They were filled with frantic entries near the end, scribbled notes and drawings of symbols I didn't understand. One page had a list, dozens of names, many of them scratched out. Some I recognized. People who had once lived in Black Hollow. People who had disappeared. And then I saw it, my name, written at the bottom. Daniel. Not scratched out. My throat closed. My hands trembled as I turned the page. The next entry was short. Just a single sentence. If the light calls to him, it's already too late. I slammed the journal shut. Outside, the wind picked up. The trees moaned and bent, as if whispering secrets to each other. I had to get out. I threw on my jacket and boots and stepped outside for the first time since the night before. The air was colder than it should have been for spring. My breath came in little clouds. The sky was gray, thick with clouds that never seemed to move. I walked to the edge of the woods. The trees stood like sentinels, tall and silent, branches reaching out like twisted fingers. My uncle's words rang in my head. Don't go into the woods. But I couldn't turn back. Something inside me pulled forward, not out of curiosity, but out of need. I had to know. I had to understand what had happened to him, to Eleanor, to this place. I stepped past the first tree. Instantly, the air changed. Quieter. Still. I walked slowly, heart thudding in my chest, each step crunching on dead leaves and brittle twigs. The deeper I went, the more the forest closed around me, swallowing the light. I felt like I was being watched. Not just by one thing, but by many. Eyes behind the trees. Shapes shifting in the corners of my vision. And then I heard it. Laughter. A child's laughter. It echoed through the trees, faint and distant, but unmistakable. I froze. Eleanor? I called out before I could stop myself. My voice sounded strange in the silence. Small. Weak. No answer. Just more laughter, closer this time. I followed it. Branches whipped against my face. The light grew dimmer. The forest twisted in impossible ways, paths that looped, trees that looked the same no matter which way I turned. I should have felt afraid. And I did. But something else was growing inside me too. A strange calm. Like I belonged there. And then I saw her. Just ahead, standing between two trees. A girl in a white dress, no older than 10, with long dark hair and pale skin that seemed to glow in the darkness. Eleanor? I whispered. She didn't move. Just looked at me with wide, empty eyes. I took a step forward. And she vanished. In her place was light. Blue. Soft. Floating in the air like it had been waiting. It pulsed once, then began to drift away, deeper into the woods. And I followed. I don't know why. Maybe part of me thought I could save her. Maybe part of me believed I'd already crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The light moved faster. I stumbled over roots, ducked under low branches. The forest around me grew darker, colder. Then, suddenly, it stopped. In a clearing. A wide, open space where the trees pulled back and the ground was covered in a perfect circle of stones. The light hovered above the center. Waiting. And that's when I heard the voice again. This time it was behind me. Daniel. I turned slowly. No one was there. Then the voice came again, closer, right by my ear. Help me. The light flared. And everything went black. Darkness swallowed me. I don't know how long I was unconscious, seconds, minutes, hours. When I opened my eyes, the forest had changed. The light that had led me here was gone. The clearing was still, but something was wrong. The trees no longer looked like trees. They loomed like tall, dark figures, watching. And the circle of stones I'd seen before? Gone. Replaced by scorched earth, blackened and cracked like fire had once burned there. The silence was unbearable, too perfect, as if the world was holding its breath. I stood slowly, head spinning, legs trembling beneath me. That's when I noticed something on my wrist. A mark. It looked like a faint burn, shaped like a spiral, pulsing slightly as if it were alive. I touched it, and pain shot through my arm like lightning. My knees buckled. My breath hitched. I closed my eyes, and then, I saw them. Flashes. Images not my own. Children, wide-eyed and frightened, standing among trees. A woman screaming. Lights circling above. And then darkness swallowing them all. Then, my uncle. He was kneeling in this very clearing, clutching a journal to his chest, his mouth moving silently as if he were praying or pleading. Behind him, the lights hovered, dozens of them. And in the center of it all, a shadow. A shape darker than night. It had no face, but I could feel its hunger. Its sorrow. Its loneliness. I opened my eyes with a gasp, the vision fading. My uncle had been here. And so had the others. I staggered out of the clearing, crashing through underbrush, driven by instinct more than direction. I needed to get out. To breathe air that wasn't filled with this whispering darkness. The mark on my wrist throbbed with every step. At last, the trees thinned, and I saw the edge of the forest. Relief flooded me, until I saw the cottage. The lights were back. Not just in the woods this time. They were around the house. Floating through the yard, above the porch, peering through the windows. Like they were waiting for me. And then I saw someone standing on the porch. My breath caught in my throat. It was him. My uncle. He looked older, thinner. Pale like mist. But it was him. His eyes met mine, and he shook his head slowly. "Daniel," he said, voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. "You shouldn't have followed them." I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. "You've been marked," he said, gesturing to my wrist. "They know your name now." "What are they?" I managed to ask. He looked past me, into the trees. "They were once people. Like you. Like me. Like Eleanor." The name made my chest ache. "She followed them," he said softly. "Just like you. But she didn't come back." "Then how do I stop this?" I asked, stepping closer. "How do I help her?" He looked down. "You don't stop them, Daniel. You survive them. That's all anyone ever does." The lights pulsed, surrounding the cottage now like a circle. He stepped back toward the door. "Don't let them speak to you again. The third night, they take." He looked at me one last time, sorrow etched into his face. "I'm sorry." And then he was gone. Just like that, gone. The lights dimmed, drifting upward into the night sky, leaving only silence behind. I stood alone on the lawn, heart pounding, skin cold. The third night was coming. And they knew who I was now. The moment my uncle vanished, the silence returned, thick and suffocating, as if the world itself had exhaled its last breath. I stared at the spot where he'd stood, willing him to come back. But I knew, somehow, he couldn't. Or maybe he wasn't supposed to. The lights were gone now. The woods silent again. But I wasn't alone. Not really. I could still feel them, watching me from behind trees, from beneath the ground, from inside the very walls of the house. The mark on my wrist had turned darker. Almost black. It burned. Inside the cottage, the air was heavier. The clocks had all stopped. The photographs on the mantel, my uncle's, mine as a boy, even my parents', had faded, like the faces were being erased. Time was folding in on itself, or unraveling. I didn't know which. But I knew one thing for certain. Tonight was the third night. I packed a small bag, just enough to get me to my car and out of town. But when I opened the front door, the world outside had changed. Fog. Dense, endless fog. It swallowed everything beyond the porch. I couldn't even see the path leading to the road. I stepped forward and felt something wrong. My feet sank into the earth. Not mud. Not grass. Something softer. Warmer. I looked down, and stumbled back in horror. Faces. Dozens of them. Just beneath the surface. Eyes closed. Mouths open in silent screams. I backed into the house and slammed the door shut, heart racing. My breath came in shallow gasps. The fog pressed against the windows like hands. I wasn't getting out. Not tonight. And suddenly I knew, I wasn't meant to run. I was meant to remember. I lit a fire in the old hearth. I opened every window. I turned on every light. I pulled out my uncle's journals, the pages where the names were written, and I read each one aloud. Each name burned my throat like smoke, like I was speaking them back into existence. When I reached Eleanor, the flames in the fireplace shifted. Turned blue. And then, I heard her. Daniel. It was her voice. Not strange or ghostly this time. Just soft. Familiar. Sad. I followed the sound through the house, heart thudding, tears stinging my eyes. In the study, the air grew cold. She stood there. The same girl in the white dress. Her skin pale. Her eyes, not empty anymore. She looked at me like she remembered. Like she knew. "Why did you come back?" she whispered. "I had to," I said, voice shaking. "I saw your name. I remembered." Her lip trembled. "They never let go." "Who are they?" Her eyes filled with tears. "The hollow ones. They take the forgotten. The ones no one looks for. The ones left behind." I stepped closer. "I didn't forget you, Eleanor." She smiled faintly. "That's why they marked you." Behind her, the shadows twisted. Shapes moved. The lights began to appear again, glowing, flickering. So many more than before. I turned to face them. "You don't get to take her," I said, louder than I thought I could. And for the first time, they hesitated. The light dimmed. The air cracked like glass under pressure. "You remember her," the voices whispered. 1,000 whispers at once. "She is not yours. She was my friend." I shouted. "She had a name. A family. A life. You don't get to erase her." The mark on my wrist burned like fire. I grabbed the journal, held it high, and shouted her name again. "Eleanor." The room exploded with light. Pain. Heat. Cold. Screams. Laughter. It was everything all at once. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. No lights. No Eleanor. Just the study, quiet and still. The mark on my wrist was gone. The fog outside had lifted. The clocks had started ticking again. And on the desk, something new, a photo I had never seen before. Me and Eleanor. Laughing. In the woods. As if time had rewound and healed the tear. I touched the photo, tears sliding down my cheeks. Maybe I hadn't saved her. Not completely. But I had remembered her. And somehow, that was enough. The sun rose like a quiet apology. Golden light spilled through the windows of the cottage, touching everything it had avoided for so long, the faded curtains, the dusty shelves, the cold hearth. The warmth was real this time. Not like before, when the sun was there but didn't feel like it. Now it reached my skin, soaked into my bones. It was morning. And I was alive. I sat in the armchair by the fire, the journal still in my lap, my uncle's writing pressed against my hands. The pages were old, worn by time and trembling hands, but they were no longer desperate. No longer filled with hopeless warnings. Now they were part of something finished. Or maybe freed. I looked down at my wrist. The spiral mark was gone. Not faded or scarred, just gone, as if it had never been there. Like the forest had given me back a part of myself. But something else had taken its place. Not pain. Memory. The kind that anchors itself to your soul. The kind that says, this mattered. She mattered. I turned to the photograph one last time. It lay flat on the desk in the study, Eleanor and me, standing in the sun-dappled woods, grinning like fools. I had no memory of this picture ever being taken. But there we were. The same white dress. The same messy hair. The same laugh I thought I'd forgotten. But I hadn't. Some part of me had always held on to her, even when the town stopped searching, even when her name faded from conversation. She had lived in my dreams, my nightmares, my questions. And now, she lived in peace. I stood and moved slowly through the house, touching the things that once felt cold and lifeless. The walls didn't whisper anymore. The mirrors showed only me. No shadows moved in the corners. Everything was still. And yet, I wasn't the same. When I stepped outside, the earth felt different beneath my boots. Solid. Safe. The trees no longer seemed to lean forward with hunger. They stood tall, silent, content to just be. A few birds chirped. The breeze carried the sweet smell of fresh pine and wildflowers. I walked to the edge of the forest. The clearing where the lights had surrounded me was just a patch of open ground now. Soft grass. Sunlight flickering between leaves. Nothing marked the spot where the hollow ones had gathered, no scorch marks, no faces in the soil. Only the quiet hum of morning. And something new. At the base of the oldest tree in the clearing, a single white flower bloomed. Its petals were delicate, almost translucent, glowing faintly in the light. I knelt beside it, brushing my fingers over its soft edges. A gift. Or maybe a sign. That she was free. That I was forgiven. That remembering had made the difference. As I stood, I whispered her name one last time, not out of fear or sorrow, but love. Eleanor. The breeze stirred gently, like a sigh of thanks. I walked back to the cottage for the last time. Packed the journals carefully into a worn leather bag. I took only what mattered, my uncle's story, Eleanor's memory, and the proof that the things we choose to remember can change the world around us. I paused at the fireplace and placed one final item on the mantel, the letter. His letter. The one that had saved me. Warned me. Led me here. It no longer felt like a message of fear. Now, it felt like a bridge. One last look around the cottage. One last breath in the place where darkness had tried to take root, and failed. I locked the door behind me. The drive out of Black Hollow was quiet. The sky was blue. The birds were loud. And the road no longer twisted like it wanted me to stay. It let me go. Like the town itself had exhaled and moved on. As I reached the final bend before the forest disappeared behind me, I checked the rearview mirror. And there she was. Just for a moment. Eleanor. Sitting in the back seat, hands folded in her lap, smiling like the sun. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I smiled back. And just like that, she was gone. Not vanished. Released. The rest of the ride was silent. Peaceful. When I finally reached the edge of town, I pulled the car to a stop and sat there for a long time, watching the trees in the distance. They didn't move. They didn't call to me. They had let me go. I had survived. And now, I would live. Not afraid. But remembering. Always remembering.